And every time I talk to somebody who works in insurance, it's never like, oh, I knew I was going to work in insurance when I was 3 years old. It's, unless you're like an actuary and you studied actuarial science, it's usually like this crazy convoluted path on how you ended up in insurance. It was my first job right out of college was as a marketing operations analyst. And this was like around 2016. And even before that, I should say, I don't even have a traditional analytics background in terms of my education. I studied hotel management of all things, and I do absolutely nothing with hotels to this day. But really got into the analytics space via the insurance industry and did that for about 6 years. And then I had that like aha moment, and I was like, I'm not really passionate about insurance. I'm sure some people are. But I was like, it's time for me to explore new things. And I took a break. And sorry, COVID has kind of like delayed my sense of time too. It's all over the place. About like a year ago, and I used it as like a self-study period. I enrolled in a boot camp and then did more things on the side in terms of like looking at blogs, looking at YouTube tutorials. I hadn't touched R that much in my day-to-day job. I used almost no R. And then about like during that year, started exploring ggplot, doing more things with R. And then, I got into data viz through the TidyTuesday community. I remember just scrolling through Twitter and seeing all of these amazing data visualizations. I was like, what are they using? What is this hashtag TidyTuesday? And that brought me to like a GitHub link where people were posting really cool data sets and saying you should share your work and share your code. And I was like, I want to give this a try. And I remember trying it out. I didn't know ggplot was a thing yet. I actually did my first one with Plotly of all things. I did not do my first one with ggplot. And then started browsing other people's code. So like Cedric had a lot of cool visualizations, Georgios, a lot of different names out there. And I just remember going through those GitHub repositories and being like, what is this code? What is this ggplot? And then of course discovered Tidyverse via ggplot. And this happened about a couple of years ago. And then I just started doing things. I'm a learner by doer. Like there's some people who like need a textbook, need a lesson plan. I'm someone who's like, I want to do this. Now I want to figure out how I get to do this by like, scraping it apart, looking on Stack Overflow and kind of reverse engineering it. So that was a really rewarding experience of finding this community because they all share code and they're really all open about it. It's like, I like to think of them like the worst magicians ever because they do magical things. And then they're like, here's all my secrets. You want to do it too? This is exactly how I did it. And I love being part of that community. And through that community, I feel like I've really developed myself as like an independent data viz person. And now I've translated that into trying out freelance and how that might translate for other clients. So it's been cool. And freelancing allows me to explore different worlds outside of insurance. So it's like I get to sample the sports world. I get to sample a little bit of the science world, depending on who the client is. And it's really cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. It is such a vibrant community. And I think when you were talking about how they're the worst magicians because they tell you how the trick is done, I think the thing that always surprises me is when I see something like, let's take Ced Scherer, right, for example, and he'll create something absolutely beautiful. And sometimes I'll go in and be like, how did he do that? And it's always infinitely easier and more straightforward than I thought. It's not like the code is some magic incantation I've never heard of. It's always like, oh yes, I know the rules, and then I used them and broke them in this way.
100%. And I have to say, he's like one of my data viz heroes, and I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of weeks ago. He was in New York City. I didn't think I was going to meet him originally because he was going to the Information is Beautiful Awards, and New York was like a pit stop en route to DC. So we caught up in the city, and then all of a sudden I was like, well, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? He's like, well, I wanted to do this tour, but things are closed. And I was like, well, do you want to have Thanksgiving with us? So it ended up having Ced Scherer of all people at Thanksgiving. It was really cool getting to meet him. And, it's just one of those things where I was fangirling because I got to meet one of my heroes in the flesh outside of the Twitter world. It was really cool.
But also like in your home for Thanksgiving, like you didn't just meet for coffee? Like you invited someone in your home. Was it, all I'm imagining is a dinner conversation where it's just the two of you talking about data viz and everybody else just like wondering if the topic's
that's not wrong. We were definitely geeking out about data visualization topics, talking about things like static graphics versus interactive graphics and how things are changing over time and what people consider beautiful. And it was pretty much us geeking out about ggplot for the majority of the time, while other people were having more like family-oriented conversations. But it was an interesting mix of things, but I had a great time with them.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. So it doesn't sound like the path of, what am I trying to get at here? So some careers take decades of expertise and learning and study. And it sounds like you were really able to leverage your background into a boot camp and then into data visualization relatively quickly.
Well, I'll back up and I'll say I did a lot of data related things prior to the boot camp. So my first gig as an analyst, I used mostly Excel and SQL. And before I even applied to this job, I had zero SQL experience, right? Until all of a sudden HR called and they're like, we want to schedule your interview and there's going to be a SQL component. I was like, what's SQL? So I bought I rushed to Amazon. I bought my SQL, like how to whatever SQL book. And I scheduled the interview out like a week in advance. So it gave me enough time to study. But it was my first time like experiencing how to code and learning that for a specific job. And then through that job, got exposed to analytics and how to solve business problems using data. What's a relational database? And kind of going through like the basics of, what a baby analyst might go through. And then after a year of that, I went on to work for a startup insurance company where I was no longer helping just one department, but I was helping several different people. And I was maybe one data person out of like 30 non-data people. So the biggest challenge there was translating technical things to non-technical people, but I was still using data to solve problems. And I would say not just data, but code. Like I would take like, someone would come to me and say, can we take this PDF and break it up into 100 different pages and label it specifically based on this? And I was like, I don't know. Let me Google it, right? I mean, that's probably 60% of my job is like, let me Google it and find out. And then, picked up Python a little bit on how to break up PDF files using certain libraries and renaming them. So it was really that kind of developed this curiosity of, there's problems that we can work better at, faster, using code and data and streamline things. And I want to learn all of that magic. And then there's only so much Googling I felt I could do. And when I reached that limit, I was like, I should probably do a boot camp and take this seriously and start learning Python seriously and understand a little bit more of data science besides, what I did with Excel data cleaning and et cetera. So that's what led me to the boot camp. And then after I came out of the boot camp, did a lot of self-study with R. I have to say, major shout out to my partner who is super supportive because I couldn't take that leap without her blessing. She's like, Tanya, if you're not happy doing what you're doing right now, I want you to go pursue this and try this out. And we're going to be fine. She's like, I've got this. You take all the time you need. I trust you. So I will say I have that opportunity only because of her and that privilege. And so it's really nice having that support system. And now here I am doing freelance things and kind of, experimenting and getting a taste of different business problems. And I love that I get to do more on the data visualization side instead of just being like a jack of all trades doing data things.
Yeah, I'm really kind of stuck on this idea of, your partner was like, take all the time you need, which is fantastic and wonderful. But then you had the self-discipline to actually study, because all I'm thinking is if someone was like, Jesse, take all the time you need to figure it out, I'd be on the couch watching Netflix and like eating Doritos for months. And then maybe like, I'll get to it tomorrow. So I'm in just absolute awe that you were like, I will take this. I mean, it is, yes, you took it seriously and yeah, you pursued it. And I mean, I think the results really speak for themselves. Looking at your portfolio and all of your pieces, I mean, you make incredible data visualizations.
That's really nice to hear coming from you. I mean, sometimes And I will say, I don't think I'm the only one who suffered from imposter syndrome, but sometimes it still happens, right? Where I wake up, I'm like, someone just called me a data viz expert the other day. I was like, expert, right? I don't really see myself as an expert, but maybe I've done enough things to know a thing or two about data visualization. So it's interesting navigating those feelings while I'm trying out something new. But I've kind of learned to be totally comfortable with that vulnerability while I'm exploring it and while I'm trying new things.
Yeah. And so when you're making a data visualization, let's talk about new things. Are you, making everything in ggplot, or are you bringing in, actually, let me back up. Can you walk me through kind of how you approach a data visualization project?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really comes down to like the type of project, but I'll speak to like a couple of passion projects that I've done on the side. And I think the first thing, it's like, well, what do I want to explore, right? What's the question that I have in mind? And then sometimes it might be more of an artsy thing where it's like, oh, I was watching, I think I posted this one recently. So there's the Senate confirmations of Supreme Court justices. And I was watching the most recent one, which was like all hype on the news. And I was like, it would be really cool to explore this visualization. Like, here I am imagining this woman up in front of the Senate, all these different senators asking her questions. This was like the committee hearing before they even had the vote. And I was like, it'd be cool to have this visualization where I have images of the nominees right in the center with an actual visualization of like the Congress, right? And then the votes of it. So I just started sketching. Like I have an iPad. So I just started sketching. I was like, well, what would that look like? And then I've got like by the way, my stick figure drawings are awful. So I really thank you, GG Image, for like letting me plot images on plots and things, because my sketching ability is really not that great. So I just started sketching and I was like, well, here I have all of these little dots. So what's going to be my biggest hurdle? And I was like, it's going to be the positional arguments for all of these little dots. Like, it's cool to have this arc, but then how do I create that? I was like, that's a lot of math. I don't know if I'm up for that. And then of course I started Googling. I was like, well, how would I approach this? Maybe somebody's developed a library already that does this for me, because there's a lot of cool people who have developed these amazing extension packages that complement ggplot and make life so much easier. And sure enough, someone had this package called GG Parliament. And it did exactly what I needed to do. It had a positional argument to help me create this arc of like all the different seats. And I was like, well, now I need to just plot the images. What other libraries let me plot images? And found those extension packages. GG Image, I use all the time. I love using images in my plots. But yeah, that's kind of the process. It's like, I'll have an idea, I need to sketch it out, and then I'll figure out, well, what are the steps that I need to do to make it come to life? And then there's probably like 20% of Googling to figure that out if it's something completely new. Sometimes it's not, but for those new things, it's like, got to go to Google and see what's out there.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's so interesting to me is whenever I ask process questions, it seems that at least lately, everybody's like, oh, I sketch it out. So I feel like there's this underlying current, even if it's pure data things, it's sketching it out. And sketching is such a cool process for getting your ideas down, your thoughts down. Even when I was doing data science work, I definitely think visually. So I would be like, here are my rows and columns, and then here's what I actually want. And that was how I could come up with like, oh, okay, I need to mutate or spread or gather. Dating myself here as a Tidyverse user. But it's such a helpful thing to do. So when you're creating something, I mean, how long do you spend in the planning stage? How many sketches do you make? Is it like hundreds of thousands of sketches and weeks of planning, or a couple minutes?
I'm going to say a word that I think most people have like a love-hate relationship with, and that word is agile, like being flexible. And I think that process kind of applies to data viz. So, if it's not for passion projects, and let's say it's for a client, I'll sketch things out and I'll do iterations of it. I like to think that everything is iterative, especially when you're working on projects involving other people. You don't want to get too far with one idea. and then that person's like, you know what, I don't love it, right? Because you're gonna feel a certain type of way if you've been working on it for hours on end. So what I like to do is I kind of like to do some basic sketches, create like a prototype, send that to someone just to see if I'm on the right track with what they want. And then I'll go back and do edits for that. So I don't like to spend too much time on any one given step, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So when we're talking about kind of your passion projects, where do you find inspiration for these?
Oh my God. Probably pop culture is a lot. Like I'm a pop culture junkie. It's probably embarrassing how many Netflix shows I consume. Not all of them are quality TV shows either, but like I'll give you an example. I love RuPaul's Drag Race. I've watched all of the American seasons, probably 50% of the international seasons. I mean, the franchise is really expanded. It's like you could watch hours on it. Yes. And I have like a slight obsession with all these drag queens. And I was like, I would love to create some visualizations about these queens and where they come from. You know, I wonder if there's any data on that. And sometimes I've got to accept the fact that the data might not exist in a beautiful CSV file or in a database. So I'd say that sometimes the biggest struggle is not just the data visualization side, but it's the data wrangling piece. And if you don't have APIs, you got to roll up your sleeves and do some web scraping, which is exactly what I did, because RuPaul's Drag Race has like a whole wiki section on it with all the different queens and all their information. I was like, all right, I'm going to plan this out. I'm going to create some scraping code. I'm going to use RVest to do it. And then I'm going to take that data and I'm going to do something with it. So I'd say, you know, it took me a few days to wrangle all of that data. And then the fun part was like using Leaflet to plot all of the images of the queens and their hometowns. And that was the fun, exciting part. But yeah, sometimes it's just randomly coming from like watching TV and like, oh, I have an idea. I want to figure out where all these queens come from, and I want to make a map out of it. So sometimes it's just random.
Okay, so I am a huge fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. I have not finished the most recent season, and I have not watched international, but I do, you know, I have a solid understanding of like 1 through 12 US RuPaul's Drag Race. So, top 3 favorite queens. Who are yours?
Oh, this is a tough one.
This is a tough one because it's 3. I was going to go with 1, but I feel like that's not fair, right?
No, and I'm going to list this queen because I just saw her for like a holiday performance, Jinx Monsoon.
Okay.
Yep. I think she's a legend. I feel like I got to throw an international queen in there too. I've been really big on Rita Baga. Canadian queen. So I'm going to throw one out there. She's currently on an international season right now. I think it's Canada versus the world. And then the last one, there's going to be like a recency factor here too, because I'm trying to remember. There's like 300 of them, right? So you're asking me to pick like 3 out of like the 300.
Percentage.
I'll go with Bianca Del Rio. I got to go for another couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so Jinx Monsoon, absolutely love. Jinx Monsoon's impression of Little Edie got me to watch Grey Gardens. And I will forever divide my life into before Grey Gardens and after Grey Gardens. I am deeply in love with Grey Gardens because of Jinx Monsoon being so good at that. And I adore Bianca Del Rio. I follow her Twitter. I'm not very good at the clapback at all. At all. I'm the person who someone will say something mildly offensive to me or maybe like a little disrespectful and I'll be like, okay. And then 3 months later, I'm like, oh, I should have said this. And it would have just destroyed them on the spot. But like Bianca, like, I don't know how someone is just that funny all the time.
So don't sign you up for Snatch Game. No Snatch Game for Jesse. Okay.
I watch RuPaul's Drag Race. And so sometimes I'll watch Great British Bake Off or, older episodes of Great British Bake Off. And I'll be like, I could do that. Like, I definitely have this weird confidence of like, I'll watch someone on a reality TV show and I'll be like, I could do that. And I watch RuPaul's Drag Race and 9 times out of 10, I'm like, how do you do that? Like the sewing challenges, I would be the person with the hot glue gun and a stapler. Like that. That's all I could do. The snatch game, I would be absolutely awful. There's so many things. There's so much talent that goes into these. And then the choreography, no. Like I don't have any of like the core pillars of talent that are required to be a drag queen. I mean, there's lots of reasons, anyway. But yeah, I'm constantly in awe of what they can do on that show. It's just incredible.
I am equally in awe. I saw someone do a death drop in like stiletto heels. And I was like, you know what? I wear heels, but I can't do that.
Let's just even start with wearing heels. I have not worn heels since 2019, right? Like, or I'd say early 2020, right? Like COVID hit and I was like, I guess I don't have to wear these anymore. And like, that was the first thing to go for me with heels. I was like, this is done, along with the dresses. We're done. Like, we don't need any of that. We're going back to this comfy clothes thing. So yeah. So I would say Bianca Del Rio is one of mine, but also I am a huge Alyssa Edwards fan.
Yes.
Alyssa Edwards lived near her in Texas. So I felt like we were kind of neighbors.
Now I'm jealous.
Yeah. Never went to her dance studio. Thought about it. I was like, well, what are you going to do? Show up and be like, hi, you were on Drag Race.
I knew Jade Jolie from my hometown because you said Alyssa Edwards, and now I'm thinking back rolls, right? That whole line. I remember Jade Jolie from like my hometown area. I still follow her, like say hi every now and then. But yeah.
Oh, I love it. And then I just a whole bunch of Vanjie clips came up on Twitter right before this call, and I do love Miss Vanjie.
Love Vanjie.
Yes. And Shangela. I mean, yes, it's always amazing. So anyway, that was so excited. Drag Race tangents.
I can't pick three. I can't believe you made me pick three. Like now you're bringing up all these other names. I'm like, well, they would also be in my top.
Yeah.
It's just hard. Impossible to pick.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is impossible to pick because there are so many good. I mean, Katya, like I can't believe I didn't include Katya in that list. So, although speaking of crossover interests, have you done any of the LOL Cody rides on Peloton?
I have not. It's on my list because I saw Trixie on it.
Yes.
And I need to actually listen, Cody's not necessarily my top choice. I love Cody. I love the body rolls, but when I'm on the bike, I expect to do nothing but like sweat and die on the bike. I don't want any frou-frou things on the side. But because he had Trixie on the show, I'm like, now I got to do a Cody ride.
Yes, that was the crossover. And this does actually all come back together. So Trixie, I think of the guests that he had on the show, because I'll do a Cody ride if I'm just going to go at like, take it easy. Please don't we'll just tell the world I said that. But it's not like it's a very hard, it's like just not an instructor that I jam with. But I noticed, so you have just built speaking of data visualizations, you have a Peloton Shiny app.
I do. I think people who know me know that I'm slightly obsessed with Peloton. I mean, I've got the bike in the corner, like right by my shoe rack. I'm sure you can see like a little peek of it there. But yeah, I mean, I was doing like Peloton is great with showing you the metrics. You log in. I think part of why it's so sticky is because they've gamified it a bit. Like you get badges, you see your week on week stuff. Yeah. But then I was like, this isn't enough for me. I need to know more about my data. And there's other Peloton R geeks that I discovered. That's actually how I found you. I was like, oh, someone who does R and also does Peloton stuff. And on top, like expanding that circle, there's actually someone who developed like a Peloton API wrapper just for R called Peloton R. Laura Ellis is the genius behind Peloton R. And that's how I started like collecting my own data. So that was like step one. And then came the fun with building the Shiny app and piping that data through the Shiny app. So yeah, I recently posted that and I was like, people are going to judge me and think I'm this huge nerd, like this fitness junkie. I was like, but no shame, because there's nothing better than taking stuff that you're passionate about and taking other stuff that you're passionate about. So here's Peloton and R, and like merging them and combining those two things. So it was a really cool, like just kind of personal project exercise to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you, are you using your, well, I have a ton of questions here. So when you're building this Shiny app, are you using that to program workouts, or is it more reflective as to what you've already done? Or are you using it to kind of look forward into what you want to do? Like maybe game your own system. Like I saw Jess Sims was at the top, not Jess King. So, you know, maybe make some changes to your workouts.
It's true. Like I did want to see which instructors I was preferring over others and see if there was a trend there. Yeah, I freaking love Jess Sims. Just side note, like I am a big fan of the glazed donut look. I do bike boot camps all the time with her.
Okay.
But I kind of used it to see like historical trends. It's really interesting when I looked at it like month over month, like how many minutes I was logging. It's like there's this huge dip in June when I got COVID. And I was like, oh, I was really like peaking. And then all of a sudden COVID, nothing. But what I thought was interesting was like July was my comeback month, but because I still dealt with like some cardio issues from COVID, like I had all crazy like heart palpitations and stuff. I noticed my workout habits changed and I was doing more strength classes than cardio. And ever since then, I've been mixing more of like the cycling stuff with strength. And now I'm curious, after this call, I'm probably going to like dig into my Peloton data. I'm curious what impact that's had on my performance in terms of output. Like, has strength positively influenced it? You know, it'd be interesting to look at that stuff, but haven't used it for recommendation systems yet. That's probably like next level. Would have to do a bunch of Googling. So for now, I'm like trusting Peloton's recommendation systems, which is kind of hit or miss.
Yeah. I will say the built-in data visualization is rough for Peloton. It never answers any of the questions that I have about my ride or my performance, or it has none of the functionality. So I love that you've built a dashboard. I may potentially, I saw you were thinking about maybe doing a how-to blog post. And I was like, you know, that would be enough for me to be like, all right, it's time, Mostipak. Like, let's do this thing. Because there are things that I want to see. And I've ended up having to like hand calculate metrics, and it just gets very tedious for me. So.
Well, now I got to ask, what are like your top one or two questions that you would have if you had access to like your data and like your own dashboard?
So things that I'm really interested in are my mileage. So is my mileage, like I'm really interested in what is my base mileage on a given week? And then if I want to improve that mileage, how do I start layering in, you know, a 5% increase without having to, it's simple math, but being like, okay, if I can't remember my numbers, but it's something like in a 30-minute ride, I do like 12 miles or something like that on average. And so how do I use that with my output to come up with like, how do we improve mileage week over week with a goal, and then kind of down train and then peak. I'm also super curious. So kind of your same thing with output. I've been lifting, I've been doing powerlifting, and I also do Power Zone pack stuff on the Peloton. So I do that because here are the 4 rides you have to do each week. And it's just someone else does the planning. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I get very tired of the same instructors over and over again, but it's like that step is taken out for me. So I would love something of like, maybe like an elementary recommendation system of, hey, you know, you've taken 3,000 Jess King classes, and people who like Jess King also like this instructor type stuff.
Right.
Or music. I don't know if the music is in the API, but I find that the music will make or break a ride for me. And this is like a huge thing that I have with Power Zone pack rides, is I generally don't like the music. So it's now built up this relationship of like, someone scheduled my workout for me, but now I'm on the bike listening to music I don't like and having feelings about all of that.
100%. I think that music is probably like the biggest influencer, and it's something that I'm gonna go look at. Like, do I do better on EDM rides than I do on like your pop rides? But the API does have stuff for like the songs, and they've got their own IDs. And I've done like a small project before. I haven't published it yet, where I take those IDs and then I run it through another API wrapper called Spotify R, which I equally love. And then you can pull the Spotify data and you can see like the beats per minute rate of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be interesting to like match up your song data, like the rhythm and all that stuff, and like match it up to your output. Are you pedaling faster to like, tons of stuff that you can do. There's so much data out there. Kudos to the people who make it easier to use APIs with wrappers like Spotify R and Peloton R. Love those packages.
I feel like you've really hit on something that I've always appreciated about the R community, is that there's almost always something created for the specific use case that you need. And it's very rare to be like, I need this thing in R and it doesn't exist, right? Like, it's very rare to be like, oh, I guess I have to make it, right? It's there, the Peloton wrapper, the Spotify wrapper, the Parliament of all things, the Parliament seating chart.
It's crazy. Like, I wonder how they think of it. It's probably, there's probably got to be a use case where they were like, oh, this doesn't exist. Let me do that. And now I'm just in this, like, I'm the benefactor of all these people who have done it before. I'm like, amazing, right? I don't have to do anything. There's all these geniuses who have already figured it out. Yeah. And the great thing is that even if it doesn't exist, or it's like a feature you want to add in, there's people dedicated and still listening to the needs of people using those packages, and they keep updating it with new versions. Like, oh, we heard that you want this, and we're planning this in the new feature release. So it's cool. It's a lot to keep up with, though. I will say that. It's like, how do I keep in tune with everything that's being updated with packages? But it's amazing. And the documentation is amazing. There's a lot of times where I feel like documentation is just either it doesn't exist or I got to figure it out. But now Cran like organizes it all. I have the functions. I can go in. People have nice GitHub pages that even explain it with examples. That's probably my most favorite thing about R, is like everybody is like really good with documenting things. So it's easy to figure out.
Yeah, the documentation and vignettes where someone is like, here's the use case for this package, and here are some sample ways that you will probably want to use it. And it just always makes me so happy because it makes it easier to kind of get over that initial hurdle. And I think we see a lot of good things come out of the R community in that direction. I remember I went through maybe like 3-week period. I was obsessed with the game Valheim. I mean, just absolutely all I wanted to do was chop. It was very weird. I just chopped down trees. I did not really do anything in the game besides chop down trees. It was just like really soothing for some reason. But they had a rudimentary API. And I thought, well, this will be a great opportunity to learn how to make a package. And so there's the package book and the use this package. And I pulled everything together, I cleaned the data, pulled everything together. And then it was really just a matter. I sat down with Rich Iannone and was like, could you make more packages than anyone I know? Could you just check this for me? And, and just have someone come in and be like, oh, like we can tweak this here and we can move this over here. And like, let's do a really fun thing here. So it's a community that definitely loves to help and give back.
Can I just say, I did not know that, because I watched the Data and Curiosity with Rich, and I heard that there's like a Twitter account for GT.
Yes.
I did not know that. And so I immediately went, and then I was like, why is there no Twitter account for ggplot? So now I'm just waiting for like ggplot to have its own account, because I think it needs to be like personified on Twitter somehow.
I feel like a ggplot account, there's so much you could do with that, right? Like I imagine they would have to hire a person full-time just to manage ggplot's Twitter account.
It would be a lot, but I would expect some like sass, with ggplot, yes. Like judging you for your color palette choices or something. Like I want it to be a little sassy.
Yeah, or like, yet again, I can't remember what the error message is, but when you try to pipe into ggplot instead of using plus, and it does now give you that helpful error message of, it looks like you used a pipe when you meant plus. Although I think that I don't know if that's still the case with the deprecated pipe. I'm so far behind in our world right now. So I'm very like, I know things have changed, but I do not quite know what. So
what are you focusing on these days? I know that you've been exploring stuff with Maya, with animation.
Yeah.
What are the other things that you're working with primarily these days?
Yeah. So work-wise, a lot of it is I'm learning a lot about more traditional marketing, right? And so how traditional marketing works. It's been really interesting because prior to being at Baseten, my work has really been in open source communities. And Baseten does have an open source component, but most of my work is focused on more traditional marketing. And so really getting to see the flip side of that and how it overlaps with open source and how it's different has been really interesting. So that is kind of work stuff. Tangentially related to work, I do think a lot about film and cinematography, storytelling, but that hasn't quite, it's like pieces that are out in my world that haven't come together into my work yet. If I could, I would love to have a film crew and we would shoot all this, we would send people to your house and we'd do B-roll and we'd have a studio.
Right.
Tuin, if you're listening. So would like a studio.
I've got another question for you because this has been on my mind.
Yeah.
Like now when I look at data visualization, because I do data visualization, I think about it differently when I'm seeing other people do it. Like it's like, oh, this is how I might do it too if I had to reverse engineer it. And I'm wondering, like in your scenario, since you're doing a lot with film and animation, now when you're watching like movies or cartoons, do you see it completely? Like, can you enjoy? First of all, can you enjoy it? Right. But has your brain been rewired to think and process things differently?
Yes, absolutely. So one, I do still definitely enjoy it. This is going to sound so weird. I would say learning animation, developing my motion design skills, layering in cinematography and film, and then my brilliant self decided I should also take a storyboarding workshop. I'm not doing that again. Like that was 2 classes at the same time. This has been a huge mistake. I am very overwhelmed in my last week of the quarter, but I have learned so much in just 6 weeks of storyboarding that when I watch TV or a movie, even junk TV, I can see patterns. And I'm currently in that state of joy of, I recognize this thing, or we're using a Dutch angle to create a sense of uneasiness for the viewer. But I'm really fascinated. So I'm definitely in a place. Are you familiar with Ira Glass's statement about how he's got this beautiful segment about how your talent doesn't match up with your taste in the beginning, and that it can take a really long time for your taste or for your talent to be as good as your taste. And he said it took him like 10 plus years to know what was good and then actually know that what he was making was good. And I struggle with this because when I storyboard something or I animate it, I am not Wes Anderson, but I like to think I am. So I do a very, very centered, flat, 2-dimensional framing composition, but I'm not Wes Anderson. It doesn't read as an auteur. It reads as like, Jesse has some primitive skills, right? It's not where it needs to be. So I'll watch, I watched A Strange World yesterday. And even just like, okay, in this 30 seconds, these are the cuts, these are the camera angles, and this is what they've done that is so much more interesting than just one long shot of a person walking. So it's, I'm in that weird place where like my taste is here and like my talent is 2 towns over. So that's
such a good line. And there's a lot to think about there, like this gap between taste and talent, and that they're not the same thing. I mean, very cool. No, it's so cool how the brain gets rewired as soon as you're doing the stuff behind the scenes. When you're viewing things, it's like, oh, everything's changed now because I'm thinking about the process that goes into it. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And I think as what's very different from data science. So when we do data science, I think that you are part of a team, but you can also just wear many hats, right? Like if you need to set up a database, you can do some rudimentary database stuff. You can do SQL, you can patch things together. You can do reports, you can do dashboards, you can do advanced analytics, you can do the communication. You could do essentially full stack data science. we could. And with animation, it is very much, you need to be a good animator. You need to be a great animator. You don't touch the lighting. Someone else is going to touch the lighting. You don't develop the story. That's not your job. Right. And so, you know, you don't even develop. So if I'm in school for 3D character animation, and it's very much like you do the character. Viz layout is going to give you an environment and props. And like you work on this one piece and it has to fit like this. I'm amazed that animated things actually get made because you have hundreds, if not thousands of people working on an individual piece of the puzzle. And it's all got to snap together nicely at the end. Like if you watch Encanto, I don't know how many animators they had, but it's not like one person animated that entire film, right? It's hundreds of people handing things off and making sure that each piece hooks up to the next piece. So it's just such a different way of working.
That's wild to think about. I mean, and it's so different to your point, like data people are often like generalists, right? Like you're expected to do everything regardless of your title. In fact, I think there's like no consensus on titles. Like I've seen a zillion job descriptions on data scientists, and it never seems to line up. Like sometimes it's data engineering heavy, sometimes it's ML ops heavy. It's all over the place. And then here you are, and it's like, you've got to be a specialist. You have to stay within your lane. Yeah. And there's other people that are doing the other stuff. So it's an interesting like dichotomy of these two things.
Yeah. When I hear people, you know, so the school I go to, I have a mentor who's a working animator. And whenever she tells us what her job is like, I'm always just like, but what if you want to do it different? And she's like, you don't? Like, you can't, like, you are a piece in this very interconnected web. And I'm like, this is a really like just total mind shift of how an entirely different industry works. My favorite fun fact these days is take an episode of Bob's Burgers, right? 22 minutes, 2D animation, nothing overtly complex. Still takes about a year to make one episode. And I'm just like,
wow.
What? And then I'm not a comedy writer. The thing that stuck with me is you're writing a joke that has to be funny a year later. After you watched it a couple, people watch it like a couple hundred times in editing and in creating this story. And I'm just like, this is just a very different world and way of working.
That's wild. I did not know it takes a whole year to create a 20-minute episode. That's crazy.
Yeah. So definitely very, very different workflow. But I have another question for you. You have been experimenting with Blender. So what? I saw that piece and I was like, we need to talk on Twitter. How is that going? Like, what's going on with Blender?
I love it. It's like the segue from, we were just talking about 2D animation. Let's talk about 3D things. Oh, wow. Blender is completely out of my comfort zone. I've been kind of messing around with like tutorials online. I got into it because I saw a lot of cool things on 30-Day Map Challenge, and some folks in that world were using Blender to make these cool 3D maps. And I was like, I want to download this tool and explore. And I think I was overly ambitious. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make a cool map in like a couple of days. Okay, Tanya, sure. And I had to take it back a step, because in Blender, the first thing that I really needed to familiarize myself was just kind of navigating things. Like you've got like a camera object, you've got like the lighting object, you've got different kind of meshes to create different types of objects like spheres and cylinders and blocks and whatnot. And I think I was just getting dizzy like the first day, like zooming around. I was like, how do I position this object without like moving this angle too much? So started from the very beginning. There's this guy who does like a very beginner series called like the donut tutorial. And I think he does a new one. Every version of Blender that comes out, he does like a new one. It's like I think there's got to be like more than 10 parts to it. But I just started off with like the donut challenge, where he's like taking this sphere and then creating a donut object out of it, and how to smooth the edges. how to like position your X, Y, and now you've got the Z axis, right? Because everything's 3D. And it's wild. There's a lot for me to still learn in Blender, but I would definitely say for anybody trying it out, just get used to like the camera and navigating, and also invest in a proper mouse, because clicking around like on this kind of mouse is not great.
So Blender, I work in Maya, which is like a proprietary twin of Blender. School requires us to use Maya. I remember I've cried in Maya, like I've opened Maya and just cried. Navigating 3D space in a 2D screen is incredibly difficult. I'm currently trying to make a little guy roundhouse kick as he walks. And I kid you not, I have to stop every 2 to 3 minutes, because if I'm not careful, I've got feet on one side of the screen and like a completely dismembered body on the other. But from a certain camera angle, it looks perfect. So it is rough stuff, but you're working, like, you're not just playing in Blender, you're working on creating visualizations in Blender. And so are there any ways to pipe your code in, or is it more taking that final like SVG image and then building it up from there?
Yeah, there's ways to take your images. So like I'm sure there's more sophisticated workflows out there, but like there's a way to like export your maps, right? Take the map that you've created with ggplot or whatever package you're using in R. Mm-hmm. And then you could take it, you could import it into Blender, and you could like overlay things on top. My issue is that now I'm at this point where I get creative and I have these ideas. Like I took a map of like this Catan style United States map. And I was like, I want to make it look like a board game, right? And I want to overlay the pieces. And I was like, how long is it going to take to like generate a roadblock? But it's a good starting point, because they're very simple objects for Catan, right? You got your roads and your little houses. But then like part of me is like, oh, it'd be so cool if you took your like wood tiles or your forest tiles and had trees on them, and then you had the sheep for this one. And I like had all of these ideas. I was like, this is just too ambitious for where I'm at now. Maybe we'll revisit it in a year, but I think that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I've got all these ideas, but I need to take it slow and remind myself we're starting new, like beginner level, and we need to take it one by one.
You'll get there. And before you know it, you're going to have like animated data visualizations in Blender.
I don't know how they do it. There's this one guy who had like this series of stuff that he's done over the past couple of years. It starts off small, right? He's done the donut challenge, like most of us do, starting off in Blender. And then like by the end of it, he's got like these action film-esque things with like a car speeding through a street with like an urban setting with everything. I was like, this is insane what you can do. And I think people probably underestimate the amount of time that goes into it. But a lot of respect for all those artists doing 3D things. 3D is completely new territory.
Yes, but you're gonna be a pro in no time, and I'm super excited for that adventure. So, but before
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. As you get to it, and maybe you stay. Who knows? I'm very excited to see what comes next for you, data viz wise. We'll put it there. But as we close out, where on the web is a good place to find you?
I am still tweeting on Twitter, so you can find me at Tanya_Shapiro. I occasionally post things on my site, TanyaShapiro.com. I'm also on Mastodon. Let me quickly check what my name is on Mastodon.
My favorite thing about Mastodon is no one actually knows how to find themselves on Mastodon. They're always like, hang on, let me look it up.
I know. And there's some people who put like the Mastodon thing as if it's an email. It's like, it's not an email. So it's mastodon.org. And then /at Tanya_Shapiro. I tried to keep it consistent. Yeah. So like my Twitter name is the same as my Mastodon one.